Hi everyone and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm really happy to be joined by Tony Lee, who's a New York Times best-selling author. So thank you for joining us, Tony.
Thank you for having me along.
So it's great to speak to you again. We already came on the podcast once before, but we only got to speak for a little bit of time. So it's great to be able to chat to you properly.
Yes, and it was one of those sort of blink and you miss it moments as well, because of the fact that I think you had about 20 a day you were speaking to.
Something like that, yeah.
Speaking to you, someone else was waiting to come in and someone else was just there. You were like a conveyor belt. It was like the red carpet line. So I felt honoured to get that opportunity to chat to you.
Well, the honour was all mine. Thank you for coming on. But yeah, it's great to chat to you. So you're a best-selling author. You've written under your own name, under a couple of different names. Why don't you give us a bit of background into what got you started into writing in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, I'm doing the Island Publishing show in a couple of weeks. And I'm doing the keynote. So I've been writing this down. So I've actually been remembering it, which is quite nice. Because I'm 54 and these things just fall out of your head. So when I was about 15 years old at school, I decided I wanted to be a computer programmer. Mainly because I'd seen Superman 3 and decided that Richard Pryor could do it, I could do it. I hadn't really worked out that difference between reality and fiction at that point. But when I did computers, this is 1986, 1987, we're working on BBC Micros. PCs weren't even a thing really at that time. And when we came to doing work experience at 16, I couldn't get any computer work experience because there weren't that many computer companies out there. So I found myself going for the next best thing, which was computer games reviews. And I had a ZX Spectrum at the time. And I contacted a magazine called Your Sinclair and said, hey, I need to do some work experience. And they sent me some games and I wrote some reviews and they paid me money. And so at the age of 16, I'm suddenly a professional writer. And I found this was something that I could do. So I then carried on through college. And then when I was trying to work out what to do with my life, I was funding myself by doing articles and doing reviews and things like that. And that carried on all the way up through my 20s, 30s, etc. And then as I went on through my life, things happened and changed. So I was a Covent Garden street performer, but then I was paralyzed. It took me 6 months to get my legs working again. In that time, I couldn't perform. So I started writing for Radio 4. That led me into writing for newspapers. Newspapers led me into working for theatres and radio. Then I ended up working in comics. Then that took me to film and TV. Everything always led me to the next point.
Yeah.
And then in 2020, the pandemic hit and I lost everything. I mean, literally before the pandemic, I had 5 strings to my bow. And I think I said this when I spoke to you in Vegas. I was writing comics. I was writing film and TV. I was writing audio dramas, the full cast audio dramas. I was visiting schools and talking to reluctant readers. And I was running comic conventions. And of those 5 things, 4 died instantaneously. Yep. Schools closed, comic conventions closed, comic shops closed, film and TV closed. So all I had was audio dramas and everybody was doing that. And so I pivoted. I moved into writing for myself, which was something that many of the children's authors I knew had started doing. One of my peers at the time was Barry Hutchinson, who was now writing as J.D. Kirk in crime. A couple of others had started doing the same thing. And so I then decided to move into that, which was now 4.5 years ago.
Wow. So it wasn't really like you had a plan to get to where you are now. Is everything's just been...
No, absolutely not. If you'd turned around to me 5 years ago and said, where would you be in 5 years? I would genuinely think I'd still be in film and TV, still doing school talks, still, doing everything I was doing before the pandemic. I hadn't even considered doing self-publishing, mainly because I'd come from 30 years in trad. I was, as you said, I'm a New York Times best-selling author. I'm a multiple-time New York Times best-selling author, but they're always for other publishers. They were never for myself.
Right.
So I was the hired gun. I'd come in, do a job, then I'd go. And that's kind of where I expected to be, and literally it was utter desperation. I worked out I had 6 months worth of savings at the start of the pandemic. No, about the middle of the pandemic, I had about 6 months worth of savings and worked out if I didn't have anything by the time my money ran out, which was April 2021, that was it. I'm done. I had to leave. I had to just change my job completely, move into something more 9 to 5. And of course, everybody was doing that. So there were no jobs. So it was an utter Hail Mary.
Yeah. And so the first books that you're talking about now, that's the Jack Gatland series, which is the one that sort of
Yes.
got everything moving a bit more.
Yes.
So did you?
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, with those books, were they that you self-published them immediately from the start?
Yes. So basically, I'd had a problem for about 3 years beforehand. I had my agent, James Wills of Watson Little. Great guy, works with a lot of comic people. He's works with Alan Moore, people like that. He was also Chris Fowler's agent for crime when Chris was around. He basically, we'd been back and forthing with a novel because I'd wanted to write a novel. I'd never written a novel apart from one book, which was very much quickly written and put up to stop an IP theft about 10 years earlier. And we'd been back and forthing on a book called The Lionheart Curse, which is kind of like a Dan Brown mystery thing set in England. And we had literally been bouncing because I'd send him the draft. He'd come back and say, we're not too sure about the language. And by that, I mean, he felt I was writing too old for the audience. Right. He felt that maybe a younger audience would want this, not teenagers, but 20s and 30s. And he felt I was aiming it a bit higher, maybe a bit more action. And then the editors were coming from the publisher and they weren't too sure. And it's just a traditional thing that anybody who works in trad publishing gets is you write a book, it takes you however long, and then the rest of the time that goes out all the way over there is just back and forthing with the publisher, the agent, the editor, everything. So this is why books take years to come out. And when the pandemic started, I was still trying to get an answer on this. And so in my mind, I was thinking, well, I'm not writing. I'm not a writer. This was proving to me that I wasn't getting anywhere. And even then, James had said, like, even if we get this going, the most you'll make on this as an advance is maybe 10 grand, probably 5 grand, because that's about the average. So even then, at the pandemic, I'm thinking, well, at least 5 grand will help. But when I realized there was no other options and I started talking to people who said, well, we're now publishing, I realized this was my only option. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean creative option. Because this was something I could do for myself. And it took me back, funnily enough, to my time as a Covent Garden street performer. Because when I was a Covent Garden street performer, if I did a show, I got paid. I might not get paid much. It depends on whether it rained halfway through or whatever. But if I didn't do a show, I didn't get paid.
Yeah.
So the impetus for me was always to go out and perform. And suddenly, 30 odd years later, I'm in a position where I'm doing the same thing. If I don't write a book, I will not make money from this book. And so I decided I had to look at it. And I had a very quick, it was a massively fast turnaround on learning how it all worked. Because over the years, I'd met people who self-published. And I'd found out very quickly there was 2 types of self-published author. There are people who say, I am a writer, and I self-publish my books. And then there are the people who say, I am a publisher, and the books I publish are mine.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but it's a slight twist in the way that it's positioned. Because if you are actually looking at writing a book, it's not just writing the book. That's traditional. Traditional is I write my book, I pass it to my editor, I move on to the next project. That's traditional. Self-publishing is you are everything. You are the editor. You are... whatever is being done. So I knew when I started, I had to do it properly. Now, I was very lucky because I picked crime. It was a good market to write in. I had been writing some crime TV shows that hadn't been picked up yet. COVID killed it all. So I was able to take these pitches and plots and scripts and sort of rub the serial number off and change it around a bit so I could actually then re-release them. Letter from the Dead, the first Jack Gatland book, was actually a TV show pitch called Dead Letter and was going to star Mark Sheppard from Supernatural.
Right. Okay.
And I've known Mark for years and we were working on something together, but it never happened. And I went, well, I can use this. So it changed and I pushed it through that way. And that was how I just sat down. I looked at everything that had to be done. So it was write it under a pen name rather than your name. Not because you're embarrassed or anything like that, but mainly because Amazon has an algorithm that says, hey, once your book comes out, everyone who bought your last book gets told. My last book was called, the Intergalactic Adventures of Mr. Clip-Clop Intergalactic Space Unicorn. It was aimed at 8-year-old kids. And the last thing I
Sounds like a
wanted...
very serious book, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't really want Amazon going, hey, kids, here's a murder.
Yeah.
So by writing it under a fake name, Amazon doesn't have any information on you. So it has to go on the category. So now it will go out to people who read the book. So it helps. There was an element of, if I was really bad at it, I could kind of just,
it's not me.
And I literally spent the first couple of months working through this. And in my mind, I was going, all I have to do is cover enough money until the world starts again.
Yeah.
That was my thing. Even if I just get a little bit of money just to tide me over. That was my entire plan. And halfway through writing the book, I was told I had to write a prequel, a reader magnet. So I had to stop and write a reader magnet. I was then being told about cover design and being told about how to get the advertising moving on this without spending money, how to promote the book. All of these things then just, once I started working out how to play it, I got it. But my first 3 books, I almost killed myself. I mean, I wrote November, December, January, February, I wrote 4 books. First time I'd ever done it. I'd never written books before that I felt were good because my agent had said, well, editor says this or publisher says that. So I had no idea if they were any good or not. But I was just throwing them out to see what happened. And as it was, they seemed to be liked. So I just carried on.
That's really interesting what you said a couple of points ago about being more of a book publisher rather than just being a writer who self-publishes, because that's basically the core message of this whole podcast, is that if you are really serious about turning your book business into making money, then you need to think of yourself as a publishing business, not just as someone who writes. Because if you want to be a writer, go and write for a newspaper or go and be a writer and get paid for it. But if you want to actually start taking this seriously, you do need to think of yourself as a business and treating yourself in that exact way.
Well, it's an interesting one because I had this conversation in Vegas, not with you, it was with a different podcast. And don't get me wrong, there are people out there who are very much about the book and they really want to make sure it's perfect and everything is secondary and it works for them. And if that's the way you want to be, that's great. But be aware that the algorithm doesn't work in your favor.
Yeah.
If you're rapid releasing, if you're bringing books to a particular market that you know are going to sell, the algorithm is happier. The algorithm, being Amazon, will sell you more. So therefore, when you look at the people who are making the money, they're in genres that are very, very big and exciting. So, paranormal romance, romantasy, things like that. They make millions because they know how to feed the beast.
Yeah.
If you have your 1942 historical fiction romance, and it's a story you've wanted to write all your life, if you release it, that doesn't mean you're a failure if it doesn't sell. It just means that the algorithm isn't right. So I'm not going to say to people, don't do it, because Christ, do it. My first book was a sequel to Oliver Twist, 12 years on, that was written as a graphic novel. And then basically someone tried to steal it as a film. So I ended up having to write it as a novel to save the IP. I think maybe 20 people have read this book in 10 years. But it was a story that I wanted to have out there. So there was a point of going, this is what must be done. So when people start saying this is how you must do it, I don't agree, because it all depends on what you want out of the experience.
Yeah.
If you want to write a book and have it on your shelf, great, brilliant, do it. If you want to make money, great, do it that way. Work it however you want to do. I needed money. I hands in the air. There was no, I desperately want to make my mark. I'd done that. I'd already been doing this in other areas. I needed to ensure I could stay alive, pay this mortgage, and feed my dog, who is now sleeping behind me. So I was very altruistic when I looked at it. I was very much a case of, how do I make this work?
Yeah. By your own admission, you said you didn't know too much about self-publishing when you first started. Can you remember if there was any particular marketing tactics you used at the beginning which helped get you from your book not being seen, and then to, as you mentioned, that beast being fed and you starting to get picked up and shown and things like that?
Well, it was a weird thing because I was not a self-published author, but I was a self-published comic creator. And there was a
Yeah,
part of my mind that did not click that the two were very similar. And I do conventions. As I said, I run the comic zone of the London Film and Comic Con every year. And we have artists who turn up with their own self-published comics, and they're doing exactly what I was doing, but I never really saw it as a different thing. And they do the same sort of things as I was doing when I started, which is just basically you're making sure that your face and your brand is known. So, so the first things I did was I made sure that every every obstruction to buying my book was removed. Because anybody who sees your book, they don't really want to buy it. You know, if you've shown them a way to do it, they will do it. But if you can provide them a way out, they'll take it. You know, it's
yeah,
one of the reasons why salespeople are taught how not to ask closed questions. You've constantly got to give me a choice. So it's like, hey, you've won either your carpet or your sofa steam cleaned free of charge. Which do you want? Not do you want it, but which do you
yeah,
want? Then you have to go, sofa? Great.
yeah,
We're in your area next week or this week. Which week's better? Next week? Great. Monday or Thursday? Thursday? Morning or afternoon? Afternoon? You don't want this bloody thing steam cleaned. But that path is moving you along
yeah,
simply by giving you the options. And I realized that a lot of this was stuff that could be used and could be thrown out there. So when I was creating Jack Gatland, and I picked the name because Gatland is my mum's maiden name, and my middle name is John, and I'm Irish. So Jack is the term that is given, and my uncle Jackie passed away recently, and I'd kind of named it a bit after him. Because if you're writing crime novels, the idea of a guy called Jack Gatland writing crime novels, you kind of think, oh, he's seen things, you know, oh, he's in that bar, he's knocking back his whiskey. You know, if I'd written it as a Lydia Pretty Wings or something, then
yeah.
it would work.
You can imagine an SAS soldier being called Jack Gatland or something like that.
Exactly. You kind of think, oh, the problem I had was I couldn't tell people who I was. So I was having to do it as Jack. And I was completely, you know, nobody realized that Tony Lee was Jack Gatland until book 4. And the only reason that I outed myself was because my agent couldn't sell the audio rights because they didn't have a Jack Gatland on their books, but they had a Tony Lee. So I had to put it out there. But by that point, 4 books in, the algorithm didn't really get affected. But I found that things like just being out there, going to Facebook groups and joining them, like UK crime books or Kindle Unlimited groups, things like that, following the rules, giving advice when needed, being polite, you know, just helping people.
Yeah.
It sounds strange, but there were so many people who would just turn up and go, here's my book, gone. And it was like, don't do that. Do something different. So I was, instead of just coming on and saying, it's Monday, it's promo day, here's my book, I would be making a special little image that was related to what I was about to talk about. Or I'd find a reason to talk about something. So they got a story out of it, effectively doing a newsletter.
Yeah.
I also created a newsletter. The biggest thing I learned, and I can't think who told me it, was basically create a reader magnet. So I created a 15,000 word prequel to my first book, which gives you an idea of who Declan is, and it's a story that leads to the start of the book. But the idea is, hey, join my VIP readers group, not newsletter kids, VIP readers group. That makes you important. Join my VIP readers group and you'll get a free book. So they instantly get a free story. If they read it and they don't like it, they never have to read my book again. At the end of that novel, there's 2 chapters of book 1. And if they like it, they can instantly buy book 1. So I was putting this out there, and I was joining every newsletter swap I could possibly find on BookFunnel and Story Origin and places like that. And I had a few hundred people on my newsletter by the time my first book came out. And I had about 50 pre-orders. So I was happy with that. You know, I was pushing it. But also, once I had those people in the group, I could then just talk to them. And, you know, just chat and, you know, show pictures of my dog and stuff like that. Humanizing Jack.
Yeah.
And then once I outed myself, it became a lot easier. So then I was able to talk a lot more about things. So by the time 4 years on, I've got 4,000 people in that group. And there's been times I've cut that group down quite a few times because there's a lot of names who come on and just don't do anything. But I can pretty much guarantee if I put a newsletter out, at least 2,000 of those people will react to it. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the best thing you can do, is you're building yourself an army.
Yeah.
I mean, I got into trouble with a couple of other crime writers about a year ago because I was talking about street teams. Now, street teams, where I come from in marketing, was the people who passionately talk about your work. So if you've got a book out, they're the ones who will be sort of sliding your book in front of other people's, or they'll be saying, oh, you should read this book. Not paid, just fanatical. And I had one writer turn around and sort of make a very big post saying, I don't pay for street teams. And I had to apologize and say, look, I didn't mean what you think it means. And then literally the following 3 responses on this group were people who all said, I do that for you, to this other person, because they are fanatical fans. So it was all about getting the fans who are not zealots, but are fanatical about what you do to the point they will tell other people. Yeah. And if you've got a readership that's that engrossed in your work, then you're laughing because you can then move on. I mean, I've moved on to doing Tom Marlowe books. I moved on to doing Ellie Reckless books, spin-off novels. And I've had people going, I've never read this type of book before because they're like a spy book or something like that. But I followed because it's you.
Yeah. And you think the newsletter is the main way that you sort of kept that community engaged in between?
Definitely helped a lot. Newsletter helped. And then about a year into it, I started up a readers group on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And that helped as well because that got a chance to put things out there for people who weren't on the newsletter. I would say going into various groups that are relevant to your genre is also
Facebook groups, you mean?
Yes. Sorry. I'm in a couple of Discord groups now that actually talk about things as well. So there's elements. Make sure you're where the conversation's happening. Yeah. If it's in Reddit or Discord or Telegram or wherever it is, Blue Sky, Facebook, make sure you're there to answer a question. Because if you can answer a question, people remember.
Yeah, for sure. This is really good advice because, I mean, most of the people I speak to...
I do apologise if I'm just going off on one.
No, this is perfect. I mean, most of the people I speak to in consulting calls and things are non-fiction books. And a lot of them ask me, what are the main tactics that I should be doing? And you've basically just said all of the ones that I recommend. You know, if you are launching a book, get into Facebook groups and start interacting with them. Don't just go in and post your book because obviously you'll get kicked out. But you go in and be a known face in there. It doesn't mean you have to spend hours a day. Like, you know, just answering 1 or 2 questions a day could be enough.
Well, when I was one thing I've always remembered, when I was a Covent Garden street performer, you'd walk out.
Sorry, you've said it 3 times now. What did you perform?
I did street theatre. I was doing an article on Covent Garden and I went along and saw it and thought, I can do this. I couldn't juggle chainsaws or ride 6-foot motorcycle unicycle. I could tell a story. And so I basically created this street theatre story that I got people out of the audience and they acted out the story. It looked as if I was mocking them, but by the end, it turned around and I was looking foolish and they were making it look better and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I was good at it. But one thing you do is when you start the show, there's nobody there. You know, you're walking out into that piazza and there is nobody. There's some people watching because they know something's going to happen. But you have to spend the first 15 minutes building an audience. And to build the audience, you've got to be blowing a whistle, shouting show. You know, you pull out a bin and you stand on the bin. And as you're about to shout, you fall into the bin. And you're basically making a fool of yourself, but you're being seen. And then you eventually start pulling people in and then they stand there. And then those people become your first audience. So then you're saying to these people, right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go off, come back on. You guys are going to go wild. And all these people out there are going to come in behind you. And they're not going to know what you know, that we're just doing this to get them in. So these guys become your allies. You know, they're your fellow collaborators. And that's the same with self-publishing, because the first people who came into my books, half of them are my beta readers now, but they're all passionate about making sure that the books work. So, you know, you've just got to get out there, build that brand. But if you build that brand and that brand is your prick, you're not going to get anybody buying your book. You've got to be careful with what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of the interesting things that I read about you was, especially with Hooded Man Media, your digital first publishing, which works with the comics. Now, you mentioned that you're your production, you have an exclusive. You're exclusive with Amazon, basically. So you, with those books that get published through there, you only publish through Amazon. Now this is interesting because last week I spoke to Dale L. Roberts about publishing wide. So it'd be interesting to hear the counterpoint about why you should be focusing on Amazon first.
Dale's great. I love his YouTube.
Yeah.
But most of what Dale seems to do is very much a lot of either non-fiction or what I call low effort books. He used to do a lot of like notebooks and things like that. He finds the things that can be mass sold. And he might have changed since the last time I looked, but a lot of what he was doing was very much along those lines of these are things that you can release and you can put out there and these can be sold. The creativity factor isn't as much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. I have to ask him, but I think
he's not going off and writing 100,000 word fantasy novels.
It's more like non-fiction. I think he focuses on. Yeah.
So with that kind of thing, he could go on Etsy and release these things. There's a lot of places you can go with it. For me, when I looked at this, and you got to remember, I was looking purely. Desperation was very much my thing here.
Yeah.
Amazon was the obvious choice.
Yeah.
Now, for me, Amazon was the obvious choice because of two things. One, it was easy to get there and people bought from Amazon. But the second thing was Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
Because for my books to be on Kindle Unlimited at the time, and it might have changed now, but the ebooks have to be exclusive with Amazon.
Yes.
So basically, I know Mark Dawson does a thing where he'll release his book as an ebook, but he'll release it on like Kobo and Apple and things like that for about a month. And then he turns around and says, that's gone now. Now I'm exclusive on Amazon.
Yeah. I think only the ebook has to be exclusive, not the paperback. Yeah.
But the thing was at the time is when I started doing it, I wasn't really that worried about the paperback. And as it was, I was adding my own ISBN. I still had some from comics, and ISBNs are ISBNs no matter what the media is. But as far as I was concerned, it was ease. It was ease of everything. But more importantly, the money I've made over 4.5 years, which is, a substantial amount, probably 70% of it has come from Kindle Unlimited.
Amazing.
Because the genre I write in, which is crime and cozy crime and mystery and stuff like that, these people eat books. And I'm not even joking. They will literally go onto Facebook and say, I need a new writer, minimum 8-book series.
Yeah.
Because they're reading a book a day. Because Kindle Unlimited is Netflix for books. Yeah. So if you can find a series that people want to just chew their way through, Kindle Unlimited works for you. Yeah. And if you're not in Kindle Unlimited, that's money that's not on the table.
Yeah.
Now, if I went to Apple Books or if I went to Kobo or I went other places to sell my ebooks, I'd have to be 100% sure that what I made there outweighed what I lost from not doing Kindle Unlimited. And in my genre, I don't think there is.
Yeah.
I don't think there's that much of a difference. I still keep an eye on it because don't get me wrong, if Amazon screw up my account one day or something like that, then I will. But for me, it seems that Amazon at the moment still, for better or worse, love him or hate him, Amazon's the biggest game in town. So you have to go with that.
It is quite interesting with them. Sorry, I was going to say it's quite interesting because you're in fiction. My books are non-fiction. Mm-hmm. Kindle Unlimited make up a really tiny proportion of my ebook sales. Even ebooks, I sell way more paperbacks. So it's interesting that you have that experience with the ebooks on Kindle Unlimited. And that's I think I read you have 170 million pages read on.
Oh, no, I'm over 250 million now.
Wow.
I mean, do you know what? While I'm actually talking to you right now, I will open up my book report and I will tell you now of all time. So let's look at. So this is all time. So this is from the moment I started as Jack Gatland back in 2020 all the way to now. Let's see if it actually. This is where I find it won't open now, and it's just going to. So I'm trying to make out. Oh, I've done all this stuff, and it'll show you. Pardon my name. Okay, so basically, yes. So all the way through it, all my books have been exclusive, as I've said.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I've had 277,000 pages read. Sorry, 277 million pages read. So it's over 250 million.
Yeah.
When I look at my royalties compared to my KDP Select royalties, and I'm not going to give the numbers or anything like that, but I can see here that literally my print royalties and my ebook royalties together are roughly half of what my KDB Select royalties are. Oh, that's in total over that entire time. So therefore, I now know that basically 66 to 70% of my income comes from people reading page at a time on
Yeah.
Kindle Unlimited. And it's as
Yeah.
simple as that. Now, I know people who literally make 85, 90% from KU. And then there are some in my same genre who will only make 40%.
Yeah. Crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think you got to think, yeah. So I think you're right. I think if you are publishing novels that are going to be page turners and people are going to want to read every single one, you do I think Kindle Unlimited just seems to be the obvious answer by an absolute mile.
And there might be a day when Kindle Unlimited isn't, where it goes down too low or something like that. But at the moment, for me, it makes sense to stay with that. And therefore, I will stay exclusive with Amazon. Now, when it comes to comics, with the exclusivity to Amazon, it's mainly because, and it's a really hard thing to say because I've been writing comics now for almost 25 years. Comic stores and things like that are becoming a bit of a thing of the past. And I don't like that. I love comic stores. But Diamond, who are the main distributors of comics, went bankrupt last year. Diamond UK got bought out by someone else, but they're still kind of wobbling. The only reason Amazon hasn't got a bigger hold is because they managed to absolutely kill the app Comixology, which was a great app for reading comics. And then Amazon bought it and played around with the UI and it didn't work. But Amazon's still, again, all it has to do is fix that, and then that's changed it. The new Kindles will be color. Once they have color Kindles, comics will be okay on Amazon, and therefore, bam, it's gone again. So you've got to look at what's happening in 5 years.
Yeah, the Kindle Color's just come out this year, I think, didn't it? Yeah.
And this is it. So 5 years from now, I think Amazon again, you'll be buying your graphic novels from Amazon on Kindle rather than, anywhere else.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope there's less of a monopoly, but you have to be a pragmatist.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of the topics you're talking about in one of your upcoming speeches is about your writing process, and you've got a bit of an interesting way of approaching it where you write your books backwards. I was trying to work out how that would work, and so I couldn't even think about it. So I didn't even prepare any questions on that exact topic. I thought I'd just let you explain, then try and understand it as you were talking.
That's great. So I come from comics, and comics is one of the hardest disciplines to write. And people will sit there and watch this and go, comics, I read them when I was 5, But if you watch a film or a TV show, they can be as long as you want or short as you want. It used to be TV shows had to be a set time, but now they're not. But even if they are, it's not you that changes that. It'll be an editor who will cut down to fit the space. Your screenplays will be as long or as short as you want. Aaron Sorkin used to write 32-minute West Wing episodes or 38-minute West Wing episodes, and they were 65 pages long. If you're writing a novel, it can be as long as short as you want. The chapters can be as long as short as you want. All of these things are completely linear. Comics, you're told what your page count is. Comics, you are told it has to be 22 pages. It has to be 110 pages. It has to be 144 pages. Because comics are printed on an 8-based sheet.
Yep.
So it will go up on those lines. So therefore, when someone turns around to you and says, right, this comic is a 32-page comic, 4 pages are gone for outside cover, inside cover, etc. Then you've got title credits, you've got 22 pages. You can't write 21. You can't write 23. You've got to set it at 22. Which means you can't start on page 1 and go, let's see what happens. You have to work it all out. In addition, if you've got a massive reveal, like, oh my God, this I can't believe this has happened, that can't be on a right-hand page. Because unlike a novel, when you open up a page on a comic, you instantly see the image here, no matter what. Right. You might not know what the context is, but the image has been seen and processed. Which means if there's a big reveal, you've seen it, and now you're on this page, but you're remembering it's there. So a big reveal has to be on a left-hand page. Well, that only gives you, in a 22-page comic, only gives you 11 pages you can use. And if you've got 2 reveals, well, now you have to start moving things around. So before you even start writing, you've got to start playing God with the pages.
Yeah.
So when I started writing comics, I realized that, and this is primarily when I was writing the Doctor Who comics, is you have to end with the cliffhanger. You have to end with the moment. You have to find something near the end that you can get to, because that is the moment that will then decide what happens here. So big moment here means I can then do 2 pages to end it, and that gives me 19 pages beforehand. You're constantly robbing from Peter to pay Paul. You're working out how to do this.
Okay.
But as I wrote with comics, it started to change the way I looked at writing stories. So I will come up with what I do school talks, and I call it the coulda, shoulda, woulda moment. And it's the point where you watch a film or you're reading a book or a TV show or something where, oh, I do apologize, sorry. It's the point of a film or TV show or whatever when something takes you out of it. So, for example, your favorite character dies, or the 2 characters you want to get together end up not getting together, and she goes off with him or something else, and your brain just goes, no, I'm not sure about that. In your mind, instantly, if you're a creator, you've come up with a better version.
Yeah.
And in your mind, you've got the coulda, shoulda, woulda moment. It could have been better. It should have been better. And in your mind, it would have been better. And that, my friend, is the idea. And once you have that idea, you can work your story from it. But your story idea is never once upon a time. Your story idea is always, put the gun down, she said. You're smack bang in the middle of a moment. You don't know what's going on. Who's she? Why they got a gun? What's happening? And once you've got that moment, you can start asking questions. And so I do this again with kids when I do school talks, I do Robin Hood, because everybody knows the story of Robin Hood. So I go, the sheriff of Nottingham is going to hang Maid Marian. And Maid Marian's going, you don't want to do this, you'll be sorry. But she's not scared because she knows that up there in the battlements, Robin Hood's there to save her.
Yeah.
If I said, Sheriff, Marian, Robin, what happens next? Anybody who knows the story of Robin Hood will go, Robin saves Marian and defeats the sheriff. That's what happens. But if you don't know the characters, if you don't know the story, we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, she's being hanged by a law enforcement officer. She could be a bad guy. She could be a serial killer. The guy up there in the battlements could be here to shoot her in the face. We don't know. So you start to ask, why? Why is she being hanged? Well, because this happened. Well, why did this happen? Because this happened. So when I talk to kids, I say, you're going to tell me the story and there is no wrong answer. Because when you work backwards, you can fit it to fit the story. So I'll say, Maid Marian's about to be hanged. Why is she being hanged? And I'll get someone shout out, because she's a dinosaur. Great. Brilliant. Okay, so why does the sheriff hate dinosaurs? Because they killed his mum. Brilliant. Was Marian the dinosaur that killed his mum? No. Her mum was. Brilliant. So now we know Marian's a dinosaur. Her mum was a dinosaur, killed the sheriff's mum. The sheriff's going to kill her instead. But why not? And you just you're asking the question and working your way back. And because you're working your way back by asking those questions, it's a lot easier to work it through. But also, you can come up with moments like, oh, they're trapped in a cell. How do they get out of the cell? They've got a key that can get it out. Brilliant. So now we know that earlier in the story, we'll get to a point where we have to find a way that they get that key. And that's a Chekhov's gun. We now know that they're going to have a moment earlier on that leads them to get to here. So by working backwards, I know the problems before I even get to them. And then once I've got to the beginning of the story, where we've got the beginning of how it all happens, I can then go back to that moment and go, right, Sheriff, Marian, Robin, how does it end with this revised story? And then that's how it will go. So, for example, with my books, I'll have one single moment that will get me what I need to do. And often it's something like it's the murder itself, or it's a crime that happens later in the book, or something that gets me. And I go, oh, that would work as a great act to end. Well, now I have to get to the act to end. So rather than just working it out, act to end, beginning, make my way there, I will just pull myself back, asking the questions, and once I've got the questions answered, then I can start writing.
Yeah. So how's that look when you're actually doing your preparation? I'm guessing you create some kind of outline for your books.
Chaos. Utter chaos. I use about a dozen different things. I use Plotter. I like using Plotter because Plotter gives me things like the 3-act structures or the hero's journey or stuff like that. So I can kind of look at the plan and go, oh, at this point I should be doing this.
Hmm.
A lot of what I use is I've got like a Remarkable, and I'll have this beside me, and I'll be jotting things down as I go along. But what I also do is I learned very quickly that I had to start working as a business rather than a writer. As I said, I'm a publisher who writes. So I use Notion, and Notion is a dashboard system that all of my tasks, all of my projects, everything is placed in Notion. But what it also gives me is notebooks where I can throw ideas in. So, for example, I have an Apple shortcut that I can talk into my Apple Watch like a spy, or I can tap it into my phone or even on my computer, tap in an idea, press return. It will then go into my inbox in my Notion, and I can just mark that as this is a notebook folder for, say, my next book.
Yeah.
My next book is called Shadow Threat. So I'll go, this is a Shadow Threat note. Click. Which means that then when I go into that notebook page, all of my ideas for Shadow Threat that I've come up with over years, every time I've had an idea, boom, that's there. So therefore, when I'm starting to, I've got my moment, I've got my idea, I can then go into that folder and look at all my other bits and pieces and go, that could lead to that, which then gives me that. Okay, I like that. So that's nice. What else do I have in this? Okay, he's going to be doing this, and I wanted in this book to do this. So if I'm doing that, that must be there. And then I'm putting it into Plotter, and I'm marking it down. One thing I do in Plotter and I've wound Cameron up with this as well, because he won't let me have my own template, is Plotter does it as chapters, but I like to do it as 5,000 words. Because my books average 80,000 words, and I know every 2,500 words is roughly a chapter. So I go words 1 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 15,000, and I'll put everything where I think the words will be, not the chapters. Because sometimes I'll have a chapter that's 150 words.
Yeah.
It depends on what the story shows. But then I'll get an idea, and this is where, it comes from comics, is I can look at it and go, right, so I now know that words 1 to 25,000 are sorted. I also know that 80,000 to 65,000 are sorted. This bit here is blank. This entire second act is blank. Let's go back into my notebook. What else haven't I used? Okay, that can go there. That can go there. That can go there. So if I'm doing that, that character needs a subplot. That subplot leads to that. If I now move those in, now I've got a working story. Now, I never used to write like this. I used to write very much like chapter 1, let's go, and I just let myself get to it. And I've succeeded with that. But you will always get to a point where you get to 50,000 words and you realize you've killed the murderer.
Right.
Because you got bored and you had an explosion.
Yeah.
Or I had a plan and I'm so far off the path into the woods, I'm having tea with the witch in the gingerbread house. So you've got to kind of get yourself back on. So what I will always do, and this is something I tell everyone they should do, is when I write my vomit draft, which is this is draft 0, and you just throw everything in, you can edit it in a minute. I get to about 50,000 words, and then I go back to page 1 and start again. And I don't mean rewrite the entire thing. I mean just read every page and check to make sure that I haven't altered anything significant, or if I have, that I can fix anything that hasn't been altered that's connected. I might have realized I needed a new character to turn up. Well, if I have a character turn up 50,000 words into an 80,000 word book, that's a bit of a con. So I now need to bring that character into a couple of scenes earlier.
Yeah.
In the same way that a movie that's really cheap will hire Morgan Freeman for a day and have him do like 15 scenes in a day and then flick them throughout the entire film. That's kind of what I'm doing. I'm just finding ways to change this as I go along. So that by the time I get back to page 50, to word 50,000, I'm now 55,000. And now I can carry on. And again, that moment is my kind of Marion Sheriff Robin moment.
Yeah.
So working backwards isn't from the end, it's from near the end, but it's showing me what the end is by going that direction.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
A long-winded answer, and I apologize for that.
No, it's perfect.
Everywhere.
I get so many questions. I mean, one of the main questions I get especially from fiction writers, but non-fiction as well, is, tips about writing and where to start and how to how to get that first draft out there. And this, starting from that point of where do you want the ending to be, and what is the smoking gun, as you mentioned, or what is the ending that you want to see, and kind of working back from that makes perfect sense, because you can fix potholes as you go along, but you can't if you get to the end and you've already written it really nicely and suddenly you've realized, as you mentioned, the murder is dead. That's quite a lot of rewriting you've got to go.
I've blown up more. I have people who write the books I write, and they'll have, there is a murder, they turn up, they solve the murder, done.
Yeah.
I have 3-4 people die in each book because I literally have to end the chapter with a cliffhanger, so I'll have things going on. And they're far more running, jumping, climbing trees, explodo. But here's one thing I was taught, and it kind of goes against what a lot of people think when they're writing. And this is one thing I have noticed. A lot of writers, and I said at the start, if you want to write the perfect book and that's it, good, do it. But there are a lot of writers out there who haven't pressed publish because they don't know if their book is a 5-star book yet. They don't know if it's going to be the book that does everything. And what I was told very early on, and I can't remember who told me it, is they said, don't write a 5-star book, write a 3-star book. But don't release it at the same price as the big publishers. Because if a person pays £8 for a book and it's not as good as they thought it would be, they're going to vote it lower. If they read a book that's half that price, they'll vote it higher. But more importantly, nobody writes a 5-star book unless it's only got 5 reviews and they're all from the family. The biggest books in the world, some of the greatest novels, like Gone with the Wind, Of Mice and Men, Fahrenheit 451. I recently was checking these for this keynote speech I'm doing. They're all on about 4.1 out of 5 on Amazon. My books are 4.3. I'm not better than them. It's just purely that's how the algorithm works. Stop striving to write the 5-star book, because the guy who went for the 3-star book has his book out now and he's published and he's making money. The person who's trying to write the 5-star book is on draft 27.
Yeah.
And will constantly be. And earlier on I mentioned The Lionheart Curse, which is the book that I was trying to write and would never get going and stuff like that. Well, when I started working as Jack Gatland, and I mean working, it was doing well, and I realized this was something that was going ahead, I spoke to my agent, who decided that maybe they should get some of my Jack Gatland money. And I said, well, no, because I'm not contracted to Amazon. So our deal is only my contracted work that you can provide. And in the end, I stepped away from them. I've gone back since because they're now doing my books to film. But I said, I'm not doing my books for you anymore. And I gave them my 60-day notice. And basically, 61 days after that, I released The Lionheart Curse. It's the exact same book that I was told wouldn't actually work. The one that I was told the editors weren't too sure about it and things like that. And I did everything that I knew what I needed to do. I put it into vellum. I had it looking properly put together. I had a great cover sorted for it. I got it, everything that I learned over the other books. And I released it with no pre-orders or anything. I just went, here's a new book, bam, on its own. In the last 2 years, that book has made me 4 times what I was promised as my highest amount if I did everything they said.
Yeah.
And yes, It's not on a Waterstone shelf, but if I wanted it to be, I could do that. I'm happy where it is. I'm just happy it's out. I'm enjoying the fact it's been released. But this is a 3-star book as far as I'm concerned. Although if you go online, it's 4.4 on Amazon.
Yeah.
Don't stress about that. There's absolutely no need to stress about it. Stephen King, James Patterson, Brandon Sanderson, they don't stress about it. They write their book, pass it, move on to the next. If you want to be making the money they do, you kind of got to be the same.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. I think you've got to be publishing as much as you can. You've got to keep writing, and you've got to be thinking about your business, not just about creating that perfect book, because otherwise you'll just always be just in this this loop of like trying to fix everything you do and trying to correct everything and just never really getting anything out there.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'd love to create the perfect book, and I do my best to give the best book I can. I mean, I have 25 lines in my to-do list for every book. 25 lines. And they might be things like create the cover, create the title, the Amazon page, a book linker. Actually, important thing: if you are a writer watching this thing and you want to release a book, get something like a Genius Links or Book Linker link for your book.
Right.
Because the one thing I see more than anything are writers saying, "Hey, buy my book. It's on Amazon.com/ASIN," and that's great. But if I'm in the UK and I click on that link, it will take me to the Amazon UK page and go, "Oh, no, sorry." First of all, it will take me to the page, but then go, "Oh, you look like you're on the wrong country's page. Let me take you to the right page." And then you go to your Amazon page, but it doesn't take you to the books page. It takes you to the main page, which means you then have to retype in all the details to get that book. And as I said at the start, people love to find a way to not buy something. A book linker is geo-linked. Therefore, if you click it in America, it goes to .com. Click it in the UK, it goes to .uk.
Yeah.
It's free. It's worth doing. But it's one of my 24. I finish my book. I go through it as an edit. I put it through Pro Writing Aid just to check if I've missed words or things like that. I then send it to 2 different editors. One is a plot editor, one is a proof editor. They send me back their notes. I revise my book. I then go through it again myself. I then send it to 2 more editors. One is a final line editor, one is a weapons specialist for my spy book. Because I once had someone complain that I realised I put a Glock with a safety catch, and Glocks don't have safety catches. I'm British, I don't know. But this guy pulled me up on it, and I said, "Would you like to be my weapons specialist?" Another little thing for anybody who's watching this: if someone sends you an email saying you made a mistake, hire them. Yep. Because the fact they've contacted an author out of the blue means they will do that for you if you ask them. Yep. My best beta readers are people who pulled me up on something and now get a chance to help me with everything. But again, go over the thing. So I've gone through 5 levels of editing before it's even gone to my beta readers, and my beta readers pick things up before it goes out. I know people who go, right, edit line, post. And they'll get people complaining, but they're still making 4 stars out of 5. So it all depends on how much work you want to put in to make the book you want to make. For me, I want to have a book that people enjoy and people don't complain about. I want people to feel that they've got their money's worth of the book. The fact I make money from it is a bonus, realistically. All I ever wanted was to make my rent back, the money that I was losing in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And in the last 4 years, I've made more money in the last 4 years from doing Jack than I did the previous 34 as Tony together, which is insane.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have done these 4 years as Jack without knowing the previous 34 years as Tony.
Yeah. Well, it's like what Ricky Gervais said. And I bring him up a lot in this podcast because I think he basically is my biggest inspiration. But he was like, I couldn't have written The Office if I hadn't worked in office all that time before. So, it is about using your previous experience.
I couldn't have written the Declan Walsh books if I hadn't murdered many people and left them under Allegedly, lawyers, allegedly.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This has been a fascinating conversation. I've loved hearing about your process. I have to get you back on.
It's been a pleasure to talk about it. I'm sorry I just ramble off. I hope that
it's been super interesting. Have you got what are your projects you're working on at the
moment? So at the moment, I'm trying at the moment to rapid release a lot of books for 2025 because I want to take a break in the latter half of the year. Mm-hmm. As I said, I burned out quite badly when I first started, and I've always been aware when I'm getting close, if that makes sense. My dog has recently been diagnosed that she's lost a lot of her eyesight. She's 30% visual now. So she needs a bit more attention, and I spend more time with her, which means I'm not writing. But what I've also been doing is do I have it on me? Yeah, so I actually narrate my books. So when I'm actually talking, I will dictate into a cloud device or something like that. So I walk her a lot, or if I'm spending time with her, I can talk. So I'm using this to hammer out books a lot quicker at the moment. So this year I've got a new series that's coming out this month, Liam Harper, which is, I've been told, is effectively Reacher meets The Littlest Hobo, which most people of my age or American will understand. I've got my next Tom Marlowe spy book I'm writing at the moment. And I've just finished. And this is the thing about a rapid release, so I will point this out very quickly for anybody who thinks they could do it. I have literally just sent off my edits for my April novel, My March novel has just been sent back to me with a final wave of edits, which I'm now putting into the pre-setting stage. I am writing my July novel, and I am planning out the marketing already for my August novel. In the
Right.
meantime, I'm also writing a comic with Iron Maiden frontman Bruce Dickinson, which is great, but he's mad, and he's also on tour with Iron Maiden. So I'm having to work around his time zones and things like that. And I'm also talking at the Island Publishing Show in a week and a half. And then I'm also talking in Lantia in Seville in May. So I've got to make sure I've got presentations for them. So it's quite hectic, but at the same time, I wouldn't change it for the world. I genuinely wouldn't. It's the best job. It is the best job I could ever have. I do everything I want to do. Oh, I'm also running a Comic Con in July, but it's everything that I want to do, because if I don't want to do something today, I'll do it tomorrow. As long as I can keep my head above the water, it can work. And if I can get these books out fast, then I can enjoy my summer a lot better.
Yeah.
But what will actually happen, I'll be honest, Teddy, is I will find I've got 2 spare months and I'll write another bloody book. Because that's what writers do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to get in touch with you, join your newsletter, that sort of thing, where's the best place to do that?
To be honest, I'm currently revamping all of my websites, etc., because I recently started the new branding of One Man, Two Names. Beforehand, it used to be there was Jack Gatland and there was Tony Lee, but now I'm writing urban fantasies under my name again. It's kind of all merging into a big group. So you can find me at jackgatland.com or tonylee.co.uk. All of my social media has gone back to being Mr. Tony Lee. So Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, everything like that is Mr. Tony Lee. You can contact me at hello@hoodedmanmedia.com. Hooded Man Media, again, was named because when I was Jack Gatland, I was hiding my identity, and Robin Hood hides his identity.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty much, ask me a question, I'll do my best to answer it.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a fascinating talk, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1.